In today's video, it's day 2 of my cruise on American Encore. The day began with an unusual view from my balcony as we passed through the last of 4 dams along the Snake River. Today, the ship is visiting Richland, Washington. I visited a local vineyard for some wine tasting, also took a look at what's left of a submarine that set an impressive record, and visited a museum that tells the fascinating story of this area's atomic past. When I went to bed last night, we had just passed through the locks at the first of 4 dams we'd be encountering along the Snake River. Ironically, when I woke up this morning and stepped out on my balcony, we were just finishing up our passage through the 4th of those 4 dams. But that was just the beginning. In addition to the 4 dams along the Snake River, there'll be 4 more that we'll encounter on the Columbia River in the days ahead. And those will be during daylight hours, so we'll have a much better view. I ran to the back of the ship to get a look at the dam we had just gone through. It's called the Ice Harbor Dam. This was just a little after 5 a.m. I'm sure most of the other passengers were still asleep. I was really excited, though, for this next part of the trip. There's some really great stuff coming up. We're just about to finish our journey on the Snake River, and the rest of the trip will be on the Columbia River. So this section just past the Ice Harbor Dam is our very last few minutes on the Snake River. This is an aerial shot of the very last part of the Snake River. I shot this a few years ago, not during my cruise, but the reason I'm showing it now is that it gives you a good view of the last part of the Snake River, and then off in the distance, the Columbia River, which the Snake will join up with. And this part right here, where the 2 rivers meet, that's Sacagawea Historical State Park. We'll talk more about that in a minute. I'm standing up at the bow looking ahead of the ship now. There's a whole lot of interesting things ahead. You can see the first of them in the distance there. That's another American Cruise Line's ship. I think it might have been American Harmony. This is such a popular itinerary for ACL that they have 6 ships on the Columbia River this season. That ship is docked at Sacagawea Historical State Park, which for thousands of years was a gathering, fishing, and trading spot for native people. It's located right at the confluence of the Snake and Columbia Rivers. In 1805, Lewis and Clark spent 2 nights here, meeting and trading with the native people before paddling down the river to the Pacific coast. Here's a drone shot I took on a different day. That area with all the trees, that's Sacagawea Historical State Park. And in the background, you've got a really good look at where the Snake River flows into the Columbia River. Now we've left the Snake River behind and we're sailing up the Columbia River. Off to our right is the city of Pasco, Washington. And I'm excited to sail through here because I live in Pasco, so it's fun for me to see it from the river. That big crane you see off in the distance, there's an interesting story to that. There's a company here in the area that manufactures big cranes and ships them to work sites all around the world. That crane was sold to the company formerly known as Hitachi back in 2009. It was just about to be shipped to them for use in their nuclear program in Japan when the big earthquake and tsunami happened. That put Hitachi's program on hold, so that crane has sat here in Pasco ever since, fully paid for and owned by Hitachi. It is exercised and maintained monthly while it waits for the day when it's needed for Japan's nuclear program again, or for when some other opportunity presents itself at some other job site somewhere in the world. We are approaching the first of several bridges we'll be going under as we head up the river to Richland, where the ship will dock for the day. The first bridge we'll go through at the bottom of the screen there belongs to the BNSF Railway. BNSF has a very busy rail yard in Pasco. The second bridge we go under is much more spectacular. The bridge's official name is the Ed Handler Bridge, named after a former mayor of Pasco, but nobody calls it that. They call it the Cable Bridge. This type of bridge is called a cable-stayed bridge. In my travels around the United States with American Cruise Lines, I've seen many beautiful cable-stayed bridges very similar to this, but this one here in Pasco was one of the first to be built in the United States. Sitka, Alaska was actually the first city in the U.S. to get a cable-stayed bridge. That was in 1971. And then in 1978, this beautiful bridge was built here in Pasco. It connects Pasco, on your right there, with the city of Kennewick on the left. Just up the river is the city of Richland, where our ship will be docking today. Those three cities, Richland, Kennewick, and Pasco, collectively are known as the Tri-Cities. The Tri-Cities is the largest metropolitan area in southeastern Washington. In northeastern Washington, Spokane is the biggest metro area. And then, of course, over on the west side, you have Seattle. For me, as a resident of the Tri-Cities, I cross the river at least several times a week on one of the three bridges near my house, but it's a very special treat to sail under some of the bridges. The next bridge that we'll be going under is another automobile bridge. It carries U.S. Route 395, kind of a famous highway that runs all the way from California through Oregon and Washington. The official name of this bridge is the Pioneer Memorial Bridge, but again, nobody calls it that. We all call it the Blue Bridge. I'm pretty sure you can see why. And now we've just got one last bridge to go under here in the Tri-Cities before American Encore reaches the dock in Richland, where it will spend the day. This is the least fancy of all the bridges here in the Tri-Cities. It's just a very basic steel-reinforced concrete freeway bridge known as the Interstate 182 Bridge. From this angle, you can barely see the Yakima River as it flows into and joins the Columbia River. So here in the Tri-Cities, the Columbia gets a lot bigger all of a sudden because the Yakima River and the Snake River both join the Columbia River here in the Tri-Cities. Once those three rivers are combined, you have roughly 85 million gallons of water per minute flowing west down the river towards Portland and Astoria. Of course, that's an average covering the entire year. This time of the year, right now, the flows are even greater than that due to snowmelt from the mountains. At this time of the year, the volume is more like 110 million gallons per minute. It's incredible. In fact, that's one of the reasons that I moved to this area, the abundance of water. This is an aerial shot of my house and my backyard on a half-acre lot in Pasco, about a mile from where our ship is going to dock in Richland. I love being able to have that big green lawn and do a lot of gardening with very inexpensive Columbia River water. In fact, there are two different water pipes that come onto my property. One is regular treated drinking water, like just about everybody has, but there's a second water pipe that comes onto each of the lots in my neighborhood, which is just straight river water right out of the Columbia, completely untreated and unsuitable for drinking. It's intended strictly for irrigating everything in people's yards and gardens. And it's so abundant that it's not even metered. We're billed at a low flat rate for it. As you can see, our ship, American Encore, has just about made her way to the dock at Howard Amon Park in Richland. Howard Amon was one of Richland's early settlers. In 1911, he deeded the waterfront land to the city to create the park. This is the primary location that American Cruise Lines docks its ships at in the Tri-Cities, but on some days there are two ACL ships scheduled to visit the Tri-Cities on the same day. On those days, one ship will dock here at Howard Amon Park, and the other will dock down at Sacagawea Park, where the Snake River meets the Columbia. If you visit Richland on an ACL cruise and you find yourself with a little time to kill, one fun thing you can do is to just start walking that paved trail that runs along the river. You can pick it up right in front of the ship. I'd suggest taking it to the right, and you can take a nice little walk along the river. That cement walking path goes on for miles. While the ship was docked in Richland, I went on 2 different excursions, one in the morning and one in the afternoon, with a nice little lunch break in between. My morning excursion was called the Richland Legacy Excursion. We hopped on one of the ACL buses for a short ride, maybe 10 minutes or so, to the first stop, where we saw what remains of a pretty amazing nuclear-powered submarine, the USS Triton. She was commissioned in 1959, and she was the only American nuclear-powered submarine to ever have 2 nuclear reactors. But what USS Triton is most famous for is a huge world record she set.
USS Triton, the world's largest nuclear submarine, surfaces off the Delaware coast at the end of 84 days of undersea cruising that carried it around the world. A helicopter hauls Captain Edward L. Beach aloft for a quick hop to the White House and ceremonies marking the historic accomplishment. Captain Beach, who skippered the Triton on a course matching that of Ferdinand Magellan in the first round-the-world voyage in 1519, receives the Legion of Merit with a presidential citation. To Captain Beach also goes the distinction of commanding perhaps the most spectacular shakedown cruise in Navy annals. Triton returns to its home berth in New London to be greeted with civic rejoicing and jubilant wives and families of the 183 officers and men whose mission had been top secret until just hours before.
Years later, when it was time to decommission and dismantle the USS Triton, her sail, what you might think of as the conning tower, was preserved and brought here to Richland. And that is what we're looking at right here, about 5 miles up the Columbia River from where the ACL ships dock in Richland. So why did they decide to preserve the sail of this submarine here? Well, the uranium that fueled the Triton's historic 1960 voyage was originally processed just a few miles north of here at a place known as the Hanford site. And years later, when the USS Triton was dismantled, her highly radiated reactor compartments were permanently buried just a few miles north of here at the Hanford site, like a full circle homecoming. So what better place than Richland to preserve the sail of the USS Triton and to honor all of her accomplishments? After a short visit to see the sail of the USS Triton, we got back on the bus and drove to a museum at the south end of Richland. It's known as the Reach Museum. It tells the story of the Hanford Reach National Monument, roughly 195,000 acres of unique desert habitat along a 50-mile undisturbed stretch of the Columbia River just north of Richland. The only reason this beautiful stretch of river wasn't dammed or heavily developed is because in 1943, the federal government needed a remote site in the middle of nowhere to produce plutonium for nuclear bombs. They were desperate to end World War II, and nuclear bombs were how they were planning on doing it. So in 1943, as part of the Manhattan Project, the government took over a huge area of land on the Hanford Reach north of Richland and built everything they needed to create plutonium. The Reach Museum does a really great job of telling the story. So, if you'd be interested in hearing some of the details of the top-secret project to make plutonium at a site along the Columbia River, you would definitely enjoy this excursion, which is known as the Richland Legacy Excursion. If you're a wine lover, you're going to want to hear all about my visit to a local vineyard. I'll tell you about that in a minute, but first, I want to give you a look at the largest, most luxurious suite on any ACL ship. It's the signature suite on American Encore. And while I show you around this huge suite, I'm going to give you a little pop quiz about cruising with American Cruise Lines. What exactly do you get if you book a suite instead of a regular balcony cabin? Does American Cruise Lines have food for people with dietary restrictions, such as gluten-free, vegan, and vegetarian? Is it necessary to reserve shore excursions way in advance of the cruise, or can you just wait and do it once you're on board? If you don't know the answers to those questions, you might want to book your cruise through a travel agent that knows American Cruise Lines. Caitlin Gallagher, the owner of Ambrin Travel. You can visit Caitlin's website, send her an email, or pick up the phone and give her a call, whatever you're more comfortable with. Okay, let's talk about my afternoon excursion, a visit to a local winery called Kiona Vineyards. If you're a wine lover, you're definitely going to want to book this excursion. The vineyards were beautiful, and we all got to sample lots of different wines. Of course, there was an opportunity to purchase full bottles of any we particularly liked. You could even have them ship bottles to your home so you don't have to carry them home with you. The barrel room is where the vineyard's entire production of wine is stored while the wine ages. If you go on this excursion, you won't actually be able to go inside the barrel room like I did, but there's a viewing window where you can look down into it. While I was down there, I even got a look at a special rack where they had hundreds of bottles of wine that they had made in previous years and which are no longer sold at retail. If someone was really motivated to add a special old bottle of wine to their collection, you could buy one of those, but it would be expensive. After a full day of excursions in both the morning and the afternoon, a local band came aboard the ship to entertain us that evening. And this was the view as the sun went down after a very nice day in Richland. This was our second day of the cruise. There are 5 more to go. I shot video the whole way, so there's a lot more still to come in this series of videos about my Columbia River cruise on American Encore. Give me a week to edit some more video, and in the next episode, we'll go through a set of locks at a dam on the river where you'll get to see the guillotine. And we'll finally get out of the desert and arrive at a city that actually has trees. It's a beautiful city on the Oregon side of the river called the Dalles. That's what's coming up in the next episode in this series, which I'll release about 1 week after this one. Please do me a favor and leave a comment with what you think about these videos. I'm Jim Zim. Thanks for watching.